Hey, YouTube prepper friends, this is Lee, the Cold War prepper, and just a couple questions I want to ask you for you to ask yourself so you can develop a plan, because it does not look like things are getting any better. Things are going downhill very fast. Oh man, I see what Helen's talking about now. I really do need a good trim, don't I? I tried to do it myself and I butchered it, so what if you don't know how to trim a beard that well, and can you find somebody who can make you look better? Maybe I need to shave it off. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyhow, I spent 4 years as an executive in electricity transmission and distribution for an electric co-op. And so the electricity is one of our biggest vulnerable points. And I want you to start asking yourself a bunch of questions. What am I going to do if I lose electricity? I think we are extremely susceptible to a cyber attack, kind of less traceable than an EMP, or I don't think a CME is going to be one of my big worries right now. I'm worried about a cyber attack. What happens if they reroute electricity back into a generator, blow it up? Into a transformer. I know that we had a factory that wanted to move in and build when I was with the co-op. That size of transformer was a substation, and we basically had to order it from Germany a year and a half in advance. We aren't going to have things coming in from Germany. They aren't going to be able to make them. We aren't going to be able to transport them. We aren't going to be able to install them. And even if we do install them, there aren't going to be any power production to get that to you anyway. So the question is, what are you going to do without electricity? Some of the key things. What are you going to do for money? I don't think we're going to go immediately into a barter system, but what are you going to do for a cash alternative, or if you don't have cash? No ATMs, you aren't going to be able to cash a check, nobody's going to accept a check. What are you going to use to purchase things if you find someplace open? Now, places be open because cash registers, most cash registers nowadays, 99.9% of them run on electricity. Places aren't going to be willing to take anything unless you have exact change, which means smaller bills if you do get them ahead of time. Finding a store that's going to be open after loss of electricity is going to be that's going to be a big question. I'm going to predict that the majority of employees who are there working at the time when we lose electricity and they know that it's going to be systemic wide are probably going to take what they can and evacuate immediately. So let's assume you're going to drive there and back. What are you going to do for fuel? No electricity to get the fuel from the refinery into the tanker. No electricity to get the fuel into the tanker, to power it, to drive to your local gas station, to dump it into the fuel tanks. No electricity for the gas pump to pump it out of the ground and into your vehicle. What are you going to do for fuel? What are you going to do for your fridge and freezer? How are you going to power them? I know a lot of people are putting a lot of faith into having their fridge and freezer and have even 2 freezers worth of frozen foods available to them. But what happens if that goes down? What happens if you lose your electricity? How are you going to handle lighting at night? Are you going to be dependent like the old Westerns and the frontiersmen who settled our far west, and that is not have anything but maybe a candle? How will you provide light at night? How will you cook? Most homes built, I'm going to say since 1970, don't have the capability to cook with old stove, coal, whatever conveniences or inconveniences as we now consider them. You aren't going to have exhaust hoods, so you're going to have to cook outdoors. How are you going to cook? What provisions have you made for storing up fuel for cooking ahead of time? If you don't have fuel, charcoal, wood, whatever, how are you going to get those? So start thinking about these questions. The next one is going to be, how are you going to heat or air condition for your home? And how are you going to be able to heat or cool it? How are you going to be able to, number 1, collect water, number 2, store water, number 3, purify water? So those are 3 more big questions you've got to ask. How will I get water? How will I keep it? How will I store it? And then along with that, if you consume it, how will I dispose of it? Which is the question of sewage. What are you going to do for sewage? Take a look at the aftermath after Katrina and what happened in the dome. And you can see the backed up toilets and everything else. And how are you going to prevent that from happening? And then finally, along the same lines, not human waste-wise, but just waste-wise, how are you going to dispose of your trash? There's not going to be trash pickup. And if you just put it in a trash bag and out on the street, then it's going to attract all kinds of insects, animals, rodents, you name it. It's not going to be pretty. Plus, OPSEC, operational security, you're going to be telling people exactly what's in your inventory, what you have been eating, what you store. Imagine their feelings if you have a whole bunch of freeze-dried cans out and they're going to say, oh, this guy has a whole bunch of stuff stored. Start asking yourself those questions. What am I going to do without money, without credit cards, without being able to write a check? How am I going to keep my refrigerator, freezer operating? Or what am I going to do to replace those? How will I heat or air condition my abode? How will I get fuel? How will I have lights? How will I cook? How will I acquire, store, and clean water? How will I dispose of sewage? And how will I dispose of trash? And those are the critical questions I think you need to start answering right now before it's too late. So with that, this is Lee, the Cold War Prepper, and wishing you safety and wishing you all the best. I don't think that the times ahead of us are looking good. They're looking more and more dire as we move on. But one thing for sure, the more you ask yourself the challenging questions and come up with the solutions to them, the higher your chances of coming out of this well. Take care, my friends. Be safe. This is Lee signing off.